that 2 weeks later we, the British Army, discovered that the man who'd planned that attack was actually arrested by us at the time. Indeed, he boasted about it, and he perhaps had those people that planted that bomb come and visit him, then they went out and they did this outrage. We were not allowed, under any rule whatsoever, to harm, touch, or coerce. I would love, in retrospect, to have had a bit more power to coerce this man, because if I'd done so, or we'd done so, perhaps, just perhaps, many lives, there were 17 killed that night, and of course it's just an example, and 50 wounded, perhaps lives would have been saved. And that's the only argument we can really advance, that we can possibly save lives, because we on this side of the House do not like torture, hate it, in fact. But the fact of the matter is that sometimes Freshta has said she wouldn't allow torture to save her family. I don't think I'd be so altruistic. I think it's idealistic in all cases to argue that when we are faced with such a horrid decision as that all of us would take the high ground. I don't think I would have that moral courage if it was my family, or indeed thousands of people. And indeed, torture doesn't necessarily mean death, it just means not death, but lots of people can die. And it has been proved that sometimes information can be extracted that can save a lot of people. Please don't deny people the option to use this technique to stop a lot of people dying. I hate it, but we've got to live with it sometimes. Thank you.
Bob Stewart, thank you very much. You're a soldier, you operated in Bosnia, you operated in Northern Ireland. Did you ever break the rules on torture?
No.
Did you sail close to the wind?
Yes.
Rough somebody up?
No, I never roughed someone up.
But you've seen it happen?
I have seen it happen. And the British Army is not without fault.
So rules do get broken?
Of course they do.
So even if you have a situation where there is judicial supervision, those rules can be broken too, can't
they? They can be bent and they can be broken, and that shouldn't happen.
And they probably would be, wouldn't they?
And it may well happen, Mr. Sebastian. That may well happen. But the fact of the matter is...
So it's a green light, taking people further away from their principles, isn't it?
I think everyone should have principles, and I think we all hate torture. Everyone here, no one's going to say they want torture, but I'm just saying, look, if you take one action, how many people might die? And if you take another, how many might die? Maybe it's more moral to take an action so that less people die, perhaps coercive techniques. Right. And under those circumstances, because death is ultimate, if you actually have less people dying, is that the most moral choice you can make?
All right, Bob Stewart, thank you very much indeed. Let me please ask Irene Khan to speak against the motion.
Well, I oppose this motion because Amnesty International has been campaigning against torture, and our research shows that it must never, ever be made legal. Of all the human rights that exist, a prohibition against torture is one of the very few that applies both in times of war and peace. Governments made the rule, and they made it because they know torture is wrong morally, legally, politically, and practically. Torture can never be used selectively. In states that sanction torture, it becomes widespread. Torture is an unreliable means of gathering information because very often, more often than not, the innocent are tortured. More often than not, people will say anything to stop the pain. And no amount of legal supervision can make torture efficient, effective, safe, or exceptional. It will only debase the legal system, it will debase the rule of law and make it a tool of oppression rather than a system for justice. And do you trust the law to control torture in countries like Saudi Arabia or Egypt or Syria? Do you want to give them more encouragement? Do you trust your government to torture their own friends as well as their opponents? So this myth about torturing a few to save many lives is really a myth. The choice rarely occurs, and when it occurs, there are other ways of gaining intelligence. In fact, torture actually makes it difficult to gain intelligence in the proper way because it undermines confidence of communities, it feeds grievances, it creates a recruiting ground for terrorism. Torture is the moral equivalent of terror. And when the state uses terror, it hands the moral victory to terrorists. There is only one way to deal with torture: eradicate it.
Irene Khan, thank you very much. Why is it a myth that torture doesn't work when a chemical weapons factory in North London was raided successfully by police 2 years ago after the Algerians had tortured a suspect?
Torture doesn't work because it is not a sustainable strategy. You may get the odd success here and there.
They found the factory.
But
it worked.
But
Many lives were saved.
There were tubes that were blown up. There have been bombs in Madrid. There have been bombs in other places.
I didn't say it helped in every instance.
No, what I'm saying.
But here, can you deny that lives were saved?
No, I'm not denying that lives were saved. What I'm saying.
So it was a useful act. It was better than having that chemical weapons factory produce material that would blow people sky high in London. Wasn't that better?